Welcome to episode 4. This one is a little more difficult to actually speak about because it is my personal perspective. And, I'm going to just talk a little bit about what happened, what changed me as a person, and, why I started this podcast and what it's going to be for in the future. So we're going to get right into it.
Let's sit in bed and watch the sun paint my window. The light comes through and bathes our lives in red. Let's go outside and watch the leaves fall above us. Soft wind on your skin turns your head.
It's important to note here that there might be triggering words or situations, so be prepared. I'm not one to joke about trigger warnings, so let's be, just be respectful that some people actually have a lot of, stress when it comes to certain things, so let's just be respectful of that. So getting right into it, April 20th, 2016. It felt like a normal day, but not really, because on the inside it felt very dark. Like there was something there, never felt before, and I never told anyone about it. And so during the course of the week of the 20th, I progressively got worse, and I started to think, maybe things would be better off if I was dead. And people that are listening to this right now, who have any of those thoughts, please, I'm urging you to tell someone. I waited until it was too late. Almost too late, because in some instances, being too late means a person already acts on their suicidal, attempts suicide. But it felt too late for me because, I didn't want what happened. I didn't want to happen. So let me just explain a little further. So the 27th of April was probably the second worst day of that year. The junior research project was approaching fast, and oh man, that put so much stress on me. Let me tell you, if you are a junior at Westfield High School and you're doing that paper, please work ahead of time. Like, you think it won't catch up to you, and you think you have forever to work on it, but the day that it gets assigned, you start thinking and writing, because I waited way too long for that. So the 28th comes, and my day was shit. It was a total shit day. I remember just going into school. I looked so terrible. I was wearing a red shirt, long sleeve, with sweatpants, and my hair was just all over the place. It was just like, when I say ugly, I don't mean because at the time I may have viewed myself that way, in terms of self-esteem, but looking back on it, I just presented myself as blech, that feeling where you just blech. And it felt like I was trudging through mud that day. And I decided that night that it would be a good idea to get rid of the pain externally, because I was tired of it just being internal. And I went into school, and I was, it flat out was a terrible day. But as I went to my U.S. History 2 class, I sat down, buried my head in my arms, and everybody, kind of ignored what was going on. And no, at the time, I gotta be honest, this is like a little difficult, but at the time, I sat there worried that, I was paranoid, very paranoid, and I remember going into that class thinking, oh my God, like someone's gonna say something, they're gonna, make fun of me, they're gonna make me upset, blah blah blah. No one did a blessed thing. No one cared what I looked like, in all honesty. Uh, but going back to that day, right now, I just walked through the school, and I honestly had wished that someone would literally like beat the life out of me. I wish that I had started something that ended, with me just. I didn't want to be anything. I didn't want to have anything to do with school. And that's the thing. That was a problem. Is no one was noticing what was going on, and that was such a huge problem because this kind of pain I had, it it takes over your entire. It takes over your head, and your head just spins and spins, and so I went around, it honestly felt like something was physically wrong with me. Nothing was. It was all emotional. And so I began to take it out on myself. I went home that day from school, because I felt that no one would care unless I did something. And when I did do, so I took a trigger warning here. I'll give you a minute. So I took a box cutter to my left arm, and the pain that came with it was almost surreal, because I'd never felt anything so relieving but so painful at the same time. So I used that continuously as a coping method up until it eventually got me to the hospital. And I'll let me explain that that's not what got me there. I have this wonderful friend, who, when she saw what was happening, I thought she was going to break down in front of me. I wasn't ready for it, but she didn't. Which, looking back on it, I'm not actually sure if it was. It may have been purposeful that she didn't, but at the same time, I saw like this look that she had in her eyes. It was during park, junior year. So we had all these different times, for lunch was a long enough time, and I sat upstairs in that one hallway of Westfield High School, right near room 222. And she sat on right next to me, and we were just talking, and I rolled my sleeve up, and I showed her, and her reaction I won't ever forget. And she said, we need to do something. And I said, no, absolutely not. I shut that shit down, immediately, and dismissed it. Actually, that happened. Yeah, that was the 29th, or whatever day we were back in school. Because I believe the 28th was like a Friday or something. It was the girl's birthday too. So, and that completely, I felt so terrible because I went and ruined her, her birthday. And she keeps telling me, that I shouldn't have worried about that. Of course, me being who I am, I did. Anyway, we're still very early on in the story, so I'm going to pick it up a little bit. The week went on in school. I believe we came back. It was like the 31st 31st. Yes, Monday the 31st. No, I believe it was like, it had to be like I think it was early May. Whatever the circumstances were, whatever, I decided to show other people, and eventually got to the point where I was like almost trying to be discovered by my teachers. And what disappointed me more later on is that, no, it doesn't matter. What matters is I had the right people at the right time. And so these two girls, I don't know, but I know someone reached out to my family and told them that something was going on. And they weren't specific, and that's not how it happened. The situation eventually got to the point where I was cutting my arm 5 times a day, per day, leading up until the point where I was in third period. It was Spanish. God, that was a class too. I loved that class, and it was homeroom. So 3 to 5 minutes in, I get this knot in my stomach, and I say, okay, I need to stop, because if it doesn't happen today, something that I don't want to happen will probably happen sooner or later. So I told my teacher I need to go to guidance, and that I probably wouldn't return. And I let a few of my friends know in the class, and I said, I'll see you whenever I get back. And they were all confused. And I went down to the guidance office. My guidance counselor was amazing. And I said, I am self-harming, and I have thoughts of, ending my life. And she picked up the phone, and, I don't know exactly what the procedure is, but she called my dad, and we had to set up. We had to go to the ER at Overlook. That process was ridiculous. That is, the first episode was what about this stuff do I want to change? I would change what happened. I went in, I spoke to, the assessor, and, I said, like, they asked, do you have a plan? And I said, I've thought about, like, I see over and over again in my head, like something with a car, because I can drive now. And they put down that I had a plan, and I didn't. So when all was said and done that day, I was in Summit Oaks Hospital around 10:20 p.m. Yep, I left school around 10 a.m. and we got to Overlook Hospital at around 11:45. 12, maybe 1. No, it had to be around 12ish. And we waited all day. I had the crisis counselor come in, and they have to do the assessment, like more of like a licensed, more of a clinical assessment than an ER assessment. So they did that, and they don't have, because I was still, like, I think I was 17. Yes, I was 17. So they didn't have a pediatric psych ward. Even saying psych ward, it doesn't. It gives off a bad vibe, but it's really not. So I'll get into that too. So I get transferred to Summit Oaks. I had walked in. I was the only one that was coming in that late at night. Everyone was in bed, and I was like, oh no, this is going to be torture. They did my intake, and it was, it was off to bed. So I went off to bed after the intake. But by the way, this girl who I eventually became friends with after the hospital, um, she waved. I can't. It made no sense to me because at the time I was like an outcast. Like in school, if I had talked about this, nobody waves or is like, oh hey. But she was really nice. I met a lot of good people there. Even some of the nurses, they were amazing. So after that, I was in there for 8 days. I was admitted May 4th. So that would be May 12th. Then I was discharged. I gotta say, we only went outside like 2 times, which I mean I guess would be a lot for 8 days, but I was outside every day at the high school, not because of like class or anything, but to get home I walked. When you're in a hospital, it was jail. It was basically a jail. The mattresses, oh my god, that was terrible. It was like a puffed up gym mat on a wooden block. And you get like the itchy blanket. It was nice and soft because they like put it in the dryer or whatever, and it was nice and warm. But eventually, it just became the itchy kind. Oh man, it's bringing back some memories. Anyway, in the morning, we had breakfast. The pancakes tasted like crap. It was terrible. Oh my goodness. All the food there was terrible. My dad had snuck in Cheez-Its. Well, he didn't sneak it in. He brought it and gave it to the staff. And one of the psych nurses, he was a great guy. I'd always be like, "Hey, I need my snack," and he'd be like, "Okay, I got you," and he'd get a cup, bring it to me. No one would know what's inside it. And he played music for us a few times, but the one song that stuck with me forever, and actually I will now eventually tear up to, is 7 Years Old by Lucas Graham. And let me tell you, that was difficult. I had not heard music in like 5 days or 4 days, because this was like a few days into the hospital stay. Art therapy was great. The woman was definitely invested in art, and taught me a lot of life lessons. So did the teacher. Oh my goodness, she was so funny. If any of you if any of you have been to Summit Oaks, I'm sure you'll know the people I'm talking about. My caseworker was a wonderful, wonderful person and helped me see everything through to the end. So blah blah blah. I get out. I step outside. Right. The breeze hits my face. I want to break down. Like that. The whole weekend, before I was discharged, I think I was discharged on a Thursday. So the weekend it was raining, and then Tuesday and Wednesday I believe it was not nice enough for us to go outside, or Wednesday wasn't. Or there was a number of days where I wasn't outside right before discharge, so I had not felt any outside, whatever. So when I was discharged, that was a great feeling. But the next step, if you know me, then this is all I used to talk about. High focus. So you can look them up on your own time, because they're really meant for psychiatric things, IOP, partial, whatever. So my experience there the first time, I just I almost was a clinician. It wasn't actually, but I focused on like other people's stuff instead of my own shit. So it was tough because when I left, it was like I didn't solve anything. And I had like a self-aborted attempt in like weeks before I left. So it was it was interesting to say the least. The first time, I remember the second time though. Wow, that was a situation because it was just difficult because I was like, as I went back, I was talking to someone who absolutely, I just gotta say right now because I don't want to get like too emotional about it, but she changed my life forever. And probably a majority of people listening will know who I'm talking about if they know me personally, or had me on Facebook like last year. So anyway, moving on from that, some difficulties came up with that. That was just the first couple months in that was a total shit. So the next step for me was to be. I had to get alternate settings in school. Something had to change. And I think it's important to talk about, the fact that there are, I'm not going to talk specifics, but there are programs in our district we're very lucky to have. And so I was lucky to be a part of one that helped me change and grow at a very fast rate because I was only in that program for 8-9 months. But so that's the beginning of my story. But all these feelings were going on. So going back to after I first, got out of High Focus the first time, just because I should explain a little bit more on that. I didn't go back to school. I was there May to August, so I didn't have a summer really. I had like 2 days with my friends, and we went down to the beach like we had the year before. Wonderful group of people, but unfortunately, I wasn't in the mental state that was proper to having a giddy good old time, and a lot of them were not prepared to deal with that, and some of them made the necessary accommodations and they helped me a lot. They're like some of my best friends to this day. 3 of them still know me very, very well and still know, and they know how invested I am in this podcast and what I'm doing. So, hey guys, I know you're listening. Just going to give you a shout out. Thanks for everything you've done for me. And keep studying. Don't want you to cop out of studying by listening to this. So go back to your studying. Anyway, so when I first went back to school, it was difficult because I was not prepared. They didn't prepare me to go back to school. And not that was their job, but that was like their intention. Because I was supposed to go back to school right, in June, but it didn't happen. So I go back September, whatnot. I don't know the day of 2016, September 2016. And right out of the gate, started not going to classes. I cut gym, I think maybe twice. And that was just already bad. I couldn't deal with it. I couldn't deal with gym class. No, oh my goodness, it wasn't gym. It was health, and I didn't cut health. I actually cut going to I believe it was Modern Foods. And don't get me wrong, had nothing to do with the class at all. And it wasn't the teacher. That teacher saved my life more than I care to count. She would talk to me a lot, and that was always, I always needed to hear something from her that day. I'm sorry for all the like pauses I have. It's just this episode is not scripted, so I'm kind of just going off memory because it's a little more genuine, and it helps me kind of just push through all that shit that I went through. Uh, so after not going to classes and I start marking up my arm again, I go to see my caseworker in the school. Because I don't know, I wasn't comfortable talking to. I think we had an interim guidance counselor, so I was not comfortable going to her. So I went to my case manager, and she's like, "I see you're struggling. I think maybe we should try high focus again." And so that's where the second high focus came in to the picture. So that was rough enough. As I already explained, that was a difficult situation. But I met some good people, for sure. So that's that. But just a general reminder: you're not alone. If you're in school, cutting classes, you're not alone. And while it's okay, because I don't want any of you to think that school is more important than your mental health, because it's not. And it will never be, ever, 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 ever. So, but if you are like not going to classes and you're having urges and whatnot, I definitely think you should talk to a guidance counselor, case manager, whoever is best to go, that you think is best to talk to about this stuff, and get the support that you need. Advocate for yourself, which is very hard to do. Trust me, I understand. So, I came back from High Focus in November, and I transitioned into that wonderful program. And it helped to know that I had more support than I did when I originally got to the high school, because that was freshman year, man. Way too many bad memories. Sophomore year, same thing. My parents had divorced freshman year, put a lot of questions in my head. A lot of my classmates will probably make fun of that, because freshman year was not someplace I don't even want to talk about it, honestly. But so my parents had divorced, and then sophomore year we moved. And sophomore year I joined Project 79, which was a total blessing. That supported me so much. And the only person I have to thank for my support in that program is Dr. Horn. I would stay after school, and work on homework until like 6:30, because I could get it done there. I don't know how it is anymore, really. After sophomore year, I was never able to be in the project office after school for more than 45 minutes without completely just losing it, because he always had something to say. And I don't know, a lot of it ended up being inspiring. Even though it was corny, it definitely was inspiring. I think a lot of people would agree, including staff of Project would agree. I had some very difficult teachers, definitely sophomore year, and they gave it to me straight, and that's not something you can always get in Westfield, because some teachers will want you to, like, you either get teachers who want you to do the best, or teachers who want to be, the best. And luckily for me, sophomore year, I had the teachers who wanted me to succeed. This one teacher, my history teacher, sophomore year, who was like, you actually are like doing terrible in my class. Like, she straight up had said that during a meeting, and was like, you're almost not passing. And I wouldn't be telling you this if I didn't care. and that stuck with me because the teachers that had, like, talked to me on the side and had been like, hey, let's see what we can do to, get your grade up or whatever. Or even ending up to the point where it was like they were waiting for me to go to them about it, which was more important, to, advocate for myself. The teachers who helped me do that definitely put me on the right path. So I apologize. We are basically 30 minutes into this. And I had said that I want to keep the episode short, and I do, but I think this one is one of the most important ones the most important I've done so far. So I'll just finish up the school side of things. So school got increasingly better during every year. It was like freshman year, decent grades. Actually, I had phenomenal grades, I think, except for history. And then it switched to sophomore year. Sophomore year, it was terrible. Very bad year for me. Because I was just coming out of like recovery from certain things. Junior year, grades were mismatched a little bit. They were all over the place, scattered. And senior year, I would say my grades were pretty shit. But despite all that, I kept on, I made my way through it. And I did go to High Focus a third time during senior year. Everybody had to have known where I was going because it was almost too obvious at that point. But so these were all the difficulties, mostly the grades, the cutting, the not going to class part, and that all got better once I had support, and that's the most important part, is the support. You need to get support, whether it's through group therapy, regular therapy, family counseling. I totally recommend essential oils. Like, I'm sitting next to my diffuser currently. I don't know. I'm thinking maybe lavender. Thinking maybe I might put some lavender in there later. But anyway, let's move on to the positive parts of my time and the positive parts of my story. I happened to have started a club. At first, it was an outside organization, and we talked to someone in the high school who agreed to have it as a club. So we could do a Gertrude Hawk chocolate sale, which was amazing. We made some good money for. We raised it for the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. Some of you may have heard of the club, Teen Support Project. It's all over Facebook, or it was all over my Facebook. But currently that is super out of commission. I don't have resources like I did back in the high school. I actually had talked to former principal, Mr. Renwick, several times. He took a special interest in the club. And the one thing he told me was, I'm glad you guys are doing this. Like, he came in, sat in on a club meeting for about, 20 minutes, and was like, I'm like, he sat there like a professional, not like, I'm trying to think of the right word. He almost looked like as he was, like, it looked like he was he was listening. It wasn't going in one ear out the other. He was sincerely listening to what our team was talking about. And at that time, I had a team of friends. They were basically just friends of mine who saw this cause as a good way. Saw it as a good cause too. And we were like already. He was going to give us a budget to do a campaign during Mental Health Awareness Month, which is May. And that never quite got off the ground. Some complications came up on both sides. And I feel very fortunate to have worked with, those kids when I did, and Mr. Renwick. A year after that, because I believe that was like late sophomore year, or early junior year or whatever. But eventually it got to the point where we didn't really know what to do. So the club took a turn, and we did, bake sales. And eventually we did a homeroom survey, 12 homerooms, a little mixed with the, classes, like the grade levels. But we did a survey, and our conclusion was that enough people knew what suicide was, and enough people were aware of, that stuff. However, they were not aware just how much it affects people's lives. I mean, some of the stuff I read was like, how could we make school easier, or how could we make school more tolerable for kids who are very stressed out? Because that's honestly what it is. Most of these kids are going home stressed out about their damn SATs. And it's like, for what? That test barely matters. I mean, I'm at community college currently. I didn't take my SATs. I'm not going to have to take my SATs because I don't believe in that. I don't believe that a test can tell me how smart I am. Because you know what? I am smart. I'm a very intelligent human being, and no thanks to high school. And it's not Westfield High School that was the problem. It's just the social institution. And whatever. I sounded a little sociological there. Social institution, whatever. It's honestly more difficult than you first realize. And I was in treatment for most of my time in Westfield, actually. More often than not, I was receiving some kind of, psychiatric treatment. So the club was very positive. The podcast idea came up, I want to say, in February of 2017. Yeah, so it wasn't that long ago. And it just didn't get off the ground. We didn't have resources. We didn't have the capability, I guess would be the right word. And now we do. And I do. It's currently just me. The other person I started this with is off at American University. Wish him well, and I hope sometime he'll come back. But getting to my mission, that part's important, because this podcast started as a thing for mental health, but it has grown to envelop other subjects, because mental health is very broad. Mental health could mean anything that is uplifting, or anything that makes someone feel better. Those are topics that are under mental health. So, with that said, the things I've done so far, I've done, what do I want to change? So that's a personal thing. So personal opinion. I did how to manage self-injury during anxiety with perspective of a fellow high school graduate, college student. And I thought that was helpful, because that was the first time I heard someone else's perspective. Because my perspective, first of all, as a guy, is different, obviously. Because guys, you hear more about girls with self-harm than guys. And I spoke at the guy and girl thing at Westfield High School last year about it. I really hope that they can do something this year. I really do. I loved the advisor for it. The advisors, they were great people. They helped me on my journey too. But moving on from that, I think there are some very cool topics that are going to come up soon. I'm hoping to work with people who are talking about the sexual harassment stuff. I think that is an important topic to be talked about, and start that conversation, and just talk about it, because it's a serious problem. And I have no comment, honestly, on the whole situation with like Harvey Weinstein and whatever. I really don't have words for that. That's just a terrible situation. So I'm hoping to work with some people on that topic. Hoping to meet with a friend of mine from earlier on this past year, to work on some stuff. And I'm also hoping to, talk with some, therapists and other teachers, because I think we need to do more, just like the episode I did last week, breaking the stigma about the Bridge program. I hope to do that with other programs in Union County. I'm trying to reach out to a couple people, and hopefully that'll go well. So my mission at this point is to promote well-being, to promote that it's okay, that what you're feeling is okay, to feel, and you shouldn't have shame, and there shouldn't be shame. The amount of shame that goes around, someone comes home, says, "Oh, I cut my arms," their parents might just throw up their hands and say, "Oh, what is it, my fault?" Or, they might not care at all. So the most important thing you can do right now is support others. And that's all that I'm doing. I just have to pay like $15 a month to do it. I'm at a loss for words because this has been far more successful than I ever intended. So please keep listening, and please also, reach out if you want to talk about something, because I might not know every topic out there, and I sure as hell don't. So the next 2 weeks, we got some good topics coming up. I think you'll enjoy it. So stay tuned for sure, and don't forget to subscribe. That will be it for this episode. Thank you for bearing with me for 41 minutes. Very much appreciated. Now it's been 42.